I watched a fight card recently that took place in New York. One of the fighters was from New York, and it was his retirement fight, and he got knocked out. And I just remember thinking, can you imagine how horrible it would feel to get knocked out in your last fight in your hometown in front of all your friends and family? Losses in MMA are already bad enough because, one, you probably just got your ass kicked. Two, you spent 2 to 3 months shutting off your personal life to get ready for the fight. And 3, since you lost, you only made half the money you could have made if you won. The UFC always launches big marketing campaigns to promote these hometown fights. This can give the fighter the opportunity to have a pinnacle moment in their career, or it could be the worst night of their career. So here are 5 hometown losses that were brutal to watch. Gian Villante is the fighter I was talking about at the beginning of this video. He spent most of his career fighting in the light heavyweight division and actually lasted 18 fights in the UFC, which is a pretty long and respectable career. He was never a superstar, but he was in the spotlight pretty often due to his friendship with Weidman. He had some high-profile fights and even had some really good moments, but mostly traded wins and losses. He was born in Wantagh, New York, and even played football at Hofstra University, which is in New York, and was an All-American. Towards the end of his career, he had mostly been fighting in the heavyweight division, so his retirement fight against Barnett would also be at heavyweight. And listen, I know you need to put on some weight when you move up a division, but comparing this to what he used to look like was pretty strange to see. In November 2021, Villante and Barnett fought at Madison Square Garden, which isn't too far from where Villante's from, so all his friends and family came out to support him. At this time, Villante had lost 3 in a row, and Barnett was kind of becoming a little bit of a star in his own right, mostly due to his flexibility and agility at his size. In the first round, both fighters were kind of trying to feel each other out and nothing significant happened. But then in the second round, Barnett started getting going, started feeling himself and letting the combos fly. Then out of nowhere, he did this. That's pretty much the worst way you can imagine your retirement fight going in front of all your hometown fans. John took the loss well, but you know he had to be burning up inside. So it definitely wasn't the ride off into the sunset moment he had hoped for, but he seems to be happy in retirement now coaching youth football in New York. Donald Cowboy Cerrone needs no introduction. A wild man, he truly lived out the mantra anyone, anytime, any place. He currently holds the UFC record for most wins with 23 and is definitely going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. He's heavily associated with New Mexico, but he's actually from Denver, Colorado. He's trained most of his career out of Albuquerque at the famous Jackson Wink Gym, but also started his own gym called the BMF Ranch in Edgewood, New Mexico. The UFC scheduled Donald Cerrone vs. Jorge Masvidal to be in Denver, Colorado in January of 2017. And when they did so, they did their thing and started marketing the fight. Cowboy was pumped to fight in his hometown and urged the crowd to come out strong. Unfortunately for him, Jorge Masvidal wasn't the best matchup, as Cerrone has been known to lack some head movement throughout his career, and Masvidal is known for his supreme boxing. In the first round, Cerrone had a lot of good moments, hitting Masvidal with his patented body kick. But as the first round kept going, it became clear that Masvidal had Cerrone's number and started really putting it on him. Masvidal nearly finished Cowboy at the end of the first round, catching a body kick and throwing an overhand right, something we'll see again later in the fight, but Herb Dean was just stepping in because time had run out, not because he was calling the fight off. Unfortunately for Cowboy and the Denver fans, round 2 got even worse. Masvidal caught a body kick, hit a heavy overhand right, and then finished Cowboy with a flurry of punches. Before the fight, Cerrone said he didn't even know who Masvidal was, so Masvidal added insult to injury and reminded him of those words after the fight, saying, "Do you know me now?" This was extra tough to watch because Cerrone's grandma, who never misses a fight, was obviously in attendance, and she's such a sweetheart, you just feel heartbroken for her. Cowboy admitted after the fight that he felt like he let everyone down. But luckily for him, a year later he got to fight in Denver again, this time against Mike Perry. He ended up submitting Perry with an armbar and had his moment to celebrate with his family and with the Denver fans. Uriah Faber is Mr. Sacramento. He was born in Santa Barbara, California, but wrestled at UC Davis, which is just down the road, about a 15-20 minute drive from Sacramento. After graduating from UC Davis, he moved to Sacramento proper, where he started Team Alpha Male, a team that became famous for being one of the best gyms for the lower weight classes in MMA. At the time, the UFC didn't have any weight divisions below lightweight, and since Faber fought at featherweight, he fought in the WEC, which is home to the best of the lower weight classes. Faber's credited with putting the lower weight divisions on the map, as he became the first superstar in MMA to fight below the 155-pound weight limit. This caused him to rise to superstar status in Sacramento. He became such a local celebrity that he was often seen training and hanging out with the Sacramento Kings players. 2 months prior to the fight we're about to talk about, the Sacramento Kings actually hosted Uriah Faber Night at Arco Arena, where his fight against Jose Aldo would take place. In April of 2010, Uriah Faber fought Jose Aldo for the WEC 145-pound belt, and because the UFC didn't have a 145-pound division, this fight would determine the best 145er in the world. At the time, the UFC and the WEC were already partners, but after this fight, the UFC decided they would acquire the WEC. On fight night, Arco Arena was packed with Sacramento natives, ready to see Faber take the belt from Jose Aldo. Unfortunately for Faber and the Sacramento fans, this fight would be one-sided from the get-go, with Jose Aldo putting on probably the best display of leg kicks we've ever seen in MMA. After the fight, Faber posted photos of his insanely bruised legs and said he was on crutches for 2 weeks. Aldo ended up winning a unanimous decision, with Faber never really doing any damage throughout the entire fight. He did display his legendary toughness, which he became known for, but it was truly a dominant performance by Jose Aldo. Unlike the fight between Masvidal and Cerrone, there was nothing but mutual respect between Aldo and Faber after the fight. Aldo came over to console Faber, which earned him a good amount of respect from the Sacramento fans. On a positive note, Uriah would go on to fight 3 more times in Sacramento throughout the remainder of his career, winning all 3 of those fights, earning a performance of the night and a submission of the night. However, none of those fights were for a belt, nor were they as high profile, so you gotta think this missed opportunity still stings. Derrick Lewis, the Black Beast. One of the most interesting fighters we've seen outside of the cage and one of the most exciting fighters we've ever seen inside the cage. He was born in New Orleans, but as a teenager his family relocated to Houston, Texas, where he started boxing and getting into MMA. Turning pro in 2010, he quickly became a popular fighter due to the fact that he was just knocking everyone out. With his exciting fighting style and his original personality, he quickly became one of the most popular public figures in Houston. In 2017, when Hurricane Harvey hit, he stepped up big time for the Houston community and is said to have pulled over 100 people from the floods. He became good friends with Houston rapper Trey the Truth, and together they would always give back to the community in times of crisis, setting up food drives and doing whatever else they could to give back. Because of this, whenever the UFC would schedule him fights in Houston, Trey the Truth and the whole city would come out strong to support him. In August 2021, Lewis got the opportunity to fight Cerrone for the UFC Interim Heavyweight Championship belt, and you guessed it, the fight took place in Houston. Unfortunately for the Black Beast, Cerrone had his number and dominated the entire fight. Gon peppered Lewis with his jab, keeping him at distance, setting up low kicks and other Muay Thai style attacks. Lewis hung tough and fired his heavy overhand right every time he got hurt, but Gon was too technical and too long for Lewis to land the big shot that he needed to get back in the fight. Eventually the pressure became too much for Lewis to withstand, and Gon finished him with some devastating combinations, leaving the arena dead silent. Lewis was visibly upset after the fight. Months later, he admitted that he went into silent mode and just needed a break from all the pressure of fighting in his hometown. You can tell from this quote how much this fight meant to him, and while he'll likely never get over this loss, he is going to get another chance to fight in Houston. UFC 271 is going to be taking place in Houston on February 12th, 2022, where Lewis will be fighting Tai Tuivasa in the co-main event. And while I do love Tai Tuivasa, I'm hoping my boy Derek can get this win and get back on track. Chris Weidman's probably the most high-profile fighter to ever come out of New York. In 2013, he beat Anderson Silva for the middleweight belt. He then defended the belt 3 times, fighting Silva again, then Lyoto Machida, then Vitor Belfort. At this point, his MMA record was a perfect 13-0, and people were starting to talk about him as one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in modern MMA. He was born in Baldwin, New York, and just like John Vellante, attended Hofstra University, but instead of playing football, he was a wrestler and even reached All-American status. Up until 2016, MMA was actually illegal in New York, with New York being the last state to have sanctioned fights. Weidman played a big role in getting this legalization passed. He spoke in front of lawmakers multiple times, convincing them that MMA fighters weren't street thugs and that MMA was a legit professional sport. He became such a well-respected figure in New York that Nassau County, where he grew up, actually named July 16th Chris Weidman Day. In November of 2016, Weidman fought Yoel Romero at UFC 205. This was the first fight card to take place in New York since the legalization had passed. This card was touted as the biggest fight card ever, and with Conor McGregor fighting Eddie Alvarez in the main event, the whole MMA world was watching. The first 2 rounds went pretty well for Weidman. He was able to take Romero down a handful of times with single legs, and even though Romero got back to his feet pretty quickly each time, things were looking good for Chris. But by round 3, Romero saw that Weidman was primarily going for this single leg takedown. Eventually, Weidman shot for 1 too many single leg attempts, and Romero saw it coming. He timed a perfect flying knee and knocked Chris out cold. MSG went completely silent. Romero jumped out of the cage and started celebrating while Weidman was still on the octagon floor trying to regain consciousness. But Weidman took the loss well and even showed up to the post-fight press conference to talk to the media. He told the media how devastating it was to lose this fight. He said fighting at MSG was a dream come true for him, especially after all the work he had done to get MMA legalized in New York. Given the circumstances surrounding this fight, this was easily the most brutal hometown loss I've ever witnessed. Friends, do me a favor. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. Maybe even drop a comment if you're feeling frisky. Either way, I appreciate you checking out the channel.